Hello, this is John Merrifield, serious academics with a sense of humor, because the fun never ends unless you let it. Well, sometimes other people let it, but most of the time you're in control. You shouldn't let it. All right, so this is the first in a series of videos about deciding how big to make certain kinds of infrastructure. You can look at stadiums, highways, reservoirs, sewer pipes. Yuck, huh? Actually, that's one of the more amusing ones to think about and go over. That's why I included it. All right, but this one just introduces just kind of the basic ideas. Okay, and one of the key issues, not with the reservoirs, but with the others that we're going to talk about here in the later videos, which you may or may not be viewing today. One of the key issues is peak and off-peak demand. I mean, highways, right? And sewer pipes. Not everybody flushes their toilet at the same time. You know, if you're down at the sewage treatment plant, oh my goodness, yeah, you know, peak demand can be a nasty thing, and not just down at the sewage treatment plant. You know, if you have a hilly city and everybody uphill of you flushes their toilet at the same time you do, and the pipe isn't big enough to handle it, it can back up into the homes at the lower end elevation-wise. Okay. You see, that makes a difference in terms of the marginal benefit of capacity. In that case of the sewer pipe, how big the pipe is. All right, so another reason for doing these, to make these available to you, is because this is an exercise in helping you think about things in order to create models from them. In other words, how should I characterize the marginal costs to capture the essence of the problem correctly? How should I think about the demand? Is it constant? Is it shifting right and left? Is it steep? Is it flat? Those are all issues that you need to take account of when you create models in order to make predictions. All right, so I'll just go ahead and show that. I've been reading from it, right, just so you'll have it there in case you didn't get it all written down. Okay, so this is economics. So one of the issues in peak and off-peak demand is, well, not just how much to build, but should we manage the demand through pricing? Okay. All right. So again, one of the keys to the issue is peak and off-peak demand, and every once in a while I like to start off with something less than my complete graph. So I want you to think for a moment. Okay, we're going to stick up the marginal cost lines up here, right? The supply lines. Okay. Does it depend on time frame? Does it depend on if you're in the planning stage, or if the facility is already built, or sort of an intermediate thing, if you can make some adjustments to change the supply, what that would look like? Let's talk about the planning stage first. Okay, I'm going to go, you think about how you think it ought to go. Maybe take a second while I'm drawing here. Let me take a second to sort of get ahead of me and guess, and then you can go, oh, there's my thumb. Thumbs up, I'm thinking with the prof. Or whoops, I'm glad I'm watching this video because I'm learning something. All right, so I made my P too big. All right. So I added the supply. There's a P up there. I made it a little bit too big, tried to adjust, blotted it out totally. That's supposed to be a P, not for price, but for planning. See, in the planning stage, it's going to cost you something just to get going, right? So that's what this intersection says. There's no capacity for this facility, whatever it is, stadium, reservoir, what you name it, highway, up beyond some minimum amount to have any at all. Okay, and then from there up, what this line is telling you, the cost per each additional unit of capacity is increasing, right? So, like, say it's a highway. Each additional lane costs more than the previous lane. Think about why yeah, I think so. You know, it's maybe it doesn't go up all that fast from one lane to two lane, but, pretty soon you're starting to have to buy up buildings and knock them down and buy more land, and it gets increasingly costly. All right, so typically in economics, the marginal cost is rising with quantity. Okay, and oops, I did make a mistake. Okay, what mistake did I make? I didn't label my y-axis. I'll do that right away. Okay, so dollars per unit of capacity. And actually, I put a Q down here. Okay, down here. I didn't label that either. Okay, so units of capacity per some time frame. Okay? Right, so always got to label your Y, otherwise the model doesn't make any sense. All right. So in the planning stages, right, it starts off, but the line doesn't go up very steeply, right, because, you know, it may even be flat at the beginning of it. 1 lane, 2 lane of highway, a little more reservoir, a little less reservoir, a little bigger pipe, a little smaller pipe. Maybe the marginal costs are not increasing all that fast, maybe not at all at first. But what if we've already built a facility and we're trying to squeeze out a little more capacity, or we're thinking of expanding an existing facility? Well, then the supply line would look something like this. And in a call for better planning, in this case a diagram drawing, I've got my facility where I wrote facility up there in the way where I needed to put an S, right? S with an apostrophe. I call that S prime. Well, what's this intersection here? That's the target capacity. Okay, so in other words, the level of capacity that was planned. And so from the planned level, once you build that, okay, once that exists, then the supply line becomes the steeper one that says, yeah, from that design capacity, we could squeeze out a little bit more capacity. For example, if it was a highway. You know, if it was an emergency, or, you know, because it's going to be costly, you could say, well, we'll use the shoulder for some traffic. Or will, you know, if there's a big difference in the way the traffic flows between morning and afternoon, everybody's going one way morning, everybody's going back the other way. And maybe you want to switch some lanes reverse them. I remember crossing the Golden Gate Bridge one time, and there's no way they're going to increase the lanes of that bridge anytime soon. So what they do is, I can't remember which direction. Yeah, going into San Francisco in the morning, going south, there were more lanes southbound, and then in the evening when more people were leaving, there were more lanes going northbound. Okay, so that's the sort of thing that the more steeply sloping S prime line is all about, and you might argue for in some cases it should be vertical, right? So, you know, once you build, for example, a sewer pipe, is there any way to increase the capacity? Is it vertical? You might think so. I mean, up to a point, it's gonna get vertical. But let's just say that some event is rolling around where you might want to have every bit of capacity that's in there, you know, so that people down lower and the ones at the sewage treatment plant don't see a tidal wave or see a smaller one, and it doesn't back up anybody's house. You could clean up the pipe, you know, get all the gunk out of there, clean it up, make sure that it's just as slick and smooth as can be, and no junk laying at the bottom to impede flow of fluid, yucky fluid. Okay, so don't overlook the potential to at least slightly increase the capacity in the short and certainly the intermediate run. Okay, so like adding lanes to existing highways, it's certainly going to be more expensive than if you built them right when you built the highway to begin with. But, you know, depending where the highway is and how much right of way you left yourself, how many buildings you don't have to tear down to make room for it, it might not be that much additional. All right, so we've got our planned capacity there, and then we have the off-peak and the peak demand. So, you know, maybe we built it sort of for the average between peak and off-peak. So what does that mean in terms of some pricing? Well, let's just say you have the price, looking for my pen, which I misplaced, over here, that's appropriate for the short run, okay, or I'm sorry, for off-peak. Okay, so you'd have that point, which I'll show you momentarily. And so you'd have P off peak, and you'd have a huge shortage. Okay, again, just not to make it so hocus pocus by drawing everything. See, there's trade-offs. I could have drawn all that before I did this video, but nah, I want to do that. So you see, just kind of faintly there, it says P with an OP for off peak. That would be the appropriate off-peak price to charge if that's a strategy that would work for that particular type of facility. You know, you're saying, well, what do you mean by that? Well, let's just take the sewer pipe example. Can we charge an off-peak price and peak price there? Oh, if when we built the pipe, we designed it to be metered by whatever time frame, day or hour or whatever, that's relevant for the peak versus off peak. Sure. Now that might be more expensive, having all those meters on there that tell you exactly when somebody's flushed their toilet or done whatever to send stuff down the sewer pipe. Then it's worth in terms of having being able to build smaller pipes. Okay, so again, another one of those trade-offs. But again, we could charge an off-peak price in some cases. But if we did that and it was the only price we charged, we weren't flexible, you can see here from my kind of ugly-looking double-headed arrow that we would have a huge shortage during the peak period, right? Again, thinking in terms of highways, traffic jam, right? Big shortage. Okay, so what would we have to do in order to not have a shortage? Well, if we can come up with that additional capacity, then we would want to charge P peak, right? Have some additional capacity, but mostly higher prices to ration out what's available, okay, during the peak period. And if there's really not any way to ration out what's available, then in the short run, to ration out what's available to have additional capacity, then we have P double prime in the off-peak period, right? So just a vertical line, thinking the supply is fixed. In the short run, well, we'd have to charge a lot higher price to keep things moving, right? Stuff in the pipe moving, the flow on the highway, you name it. All right, so, right, shortages are avoided with higher prices, and higher prices can be ameliorated by having some additional capacity. And maybe we can only add that capacity given a little bit of time. So that's one of the things. At first, we charge the higher price, right? We have surplus revenue as a result from that. And we set that aside to build the additional infrastructure. And then eventually, so we can charge a little lower price in the peak period, right? To still ration out that limited quantity. So again, taking the highway. So for example, maybe if we had congestion pricing for the highway, maybe we'd only have to have 6 lanes instead of 9 or 10 to avoid those peak period rush hour type traffic jams. Okay, so I think that does it for this little micro video to start things off. I'm going to jump into some of the others, these separate videos, so you can jump right into those with me. I'll still have my question mark tie on to encourage questions, and but you can watch them at another time. So long until then.